Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope your day and your week have been going very well so far. Got a new day, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day and day 2 of the NBA play-in tournament comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. Yesterday was the 7 seed versus 8 seed games. Today is the 9 seed versus 10 seed games. Magic Hawks, bit of a blowout, not super interesting. The Warriors Grizzlies game, though, really exciting all the way down to the wire. Today's games should be very exciting because these are obviously single elimination games. The loser of these 9-10 games, they are done for the season. The winner moves on to Friday to play the loser of these 7-8 games. So we got some pretty exciting stuff. And of course, guys, I've got some NBA player props to go ahead and share with you. But first, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last night. And look, admittedly, we did not have a great start to the postseason. We went 0-2 in our single bets, and we did lose our 3-leg parlay. We did at least hit one bet yesterday, which was the Jimmy Butler over 18.5 points, the second leg of the parlay. So it wasn't a complete red cross everywhere, red X everywhere. But yeah, not the best start to the season. Although I will say, and again, a loss is a loss, but I don't think we were that far off in terms of the data. Trae Young, Jaren Jackson Jr., I mean, they both barely missed. Jaren Jackson Jr. finished with 18 points, was 3 points off. Trae Young finished with 34 points plus assists, 3 points / assists off, and both of them had horrible shooting nights. Jaren Jackson Jr. 6 for 15. Trae Young, I believe, was 8 for 21, if I'm not mistaken. So both had really bad shooting nights. One more made shot. They hit another 3, and we have a cash on our hands. So pretty close. John Morant finished with 22 points, missed it by half point. The only one we were way off was Paolo. He only finished with 17 points, but he too had a really poor shooting night. But one bad night does not take away from the great season that we are having, including regular season and playoffs. 202 and 160 in our single bet category, up over 19 units profit. And for the parlay section, 18 and 39, which not a great record, but we are up over 14 units profit in our parlay section. So like I said, guys, one bad night is not going to go ahead and deter us. We got new day, new picks, and they're all coming your way right now. All right, guys, jumping right into the outlier screen. How today is going to go, I have 3 single bets followed by a 3-leg parlay to go ahead and share with you guys. We're going to start off with a single bet, so I'll make sure to go ahead and let you guys know when we are switching over from single bets to parlay. I'll make sure to be very specific about that, but this is the single bet portion of today's video. So our first single bet player prop, meaning these are meant to be bet individually, not together in a parlay. Of course, you can do whatever you'd like with them. But these are meant to be bet individually as single bets. We are looking at the Heat, I almost said Hornets, definitely not the Hornets. The Miami Heat Chicago Bulls game, 7:30 p.m. tip-off, the first play-in game in today's slate. The winner of this game will go on to play Atlanta on Friday in the battle for the 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. We're going Tyler Hero here, over 34.5 points plus rebounds plus assists against Chicago. Now, this is minus 150 odds over on DraftKings. Yes, it's a little juice. It's usually as far as I'm willing to go in terms of a single bet. You can go up to 35.5. The odds are a little bit more favorable for us in terms of the value, but obviously the data is not as strong. And to those asking, does it really matter? Well, John Morant, had I taken him yesterday over 21.5 versus 22.5, it's a difference between a cash and a loss. So sometimes that 1 point value is really important. So minus 150, like I said, a little juice. We'll have to put a little extra unit, maybe another quarter unit on this to make it worth it. But I still think it's definitely valuable enough. The data really solid across the board. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 37.1 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over his last 10 games. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view. A 52% hit rate on the year for Tyler Hero for this line. 40 out of 77 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 34.58 PRAs per game overall this year. So really good numbers here, but the one that really sticks out to me, of course, is the head-to-head data. Each of his last 4 matchups with the Chicago Bulls, he's cashed the over. That is, of course, a 100% hit rate, averaging 39 PRAs per game against Chicago. And this is not like last year's data. Only one game in this data range is from last season. 3 times this year already, he's played Chicago in all 3 games. He's cashed the over, including the most recent matchup just a week ago, back on April 9th. He had 30 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists in what was an 8-point loss for Miami. Now, Tyler Hero is listed as a shooting guard. Again, we are kind of in the positionless era of the NBA where, yes, he's a shooting guard, but he's not really a shooting guard. He's lining up basically as a point guard lately for the Miami Heat, and honestly, versus point guards, look at Chicago's defense. A lot of point guards have been going off when they play Chicago. Overall, the Bulls this season, they were bottom 3 in all key categories in terms of defense. Points, rebounds, assists. This was one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA this year. Versus point guards, bottom 10 in all 3 categories. Now, versus shooting guards, they were a little bit better, but not much better. 26th in points, 26th in rebounds, and 14th in assists. The moral of the story here being it's a really good defensive matchup. Obviously, like I mentioned, it's a single elimination game. If Miami loses, their season is over, so they have nothing to hold back. Everything, they have to go full throttle, as many minutes as you can play, as hard as you can play. Considering that intensity, considering that Tyler Hero has effectively become the go-to offensive guy on this Miami Heat team, it makes it all the more important for him to step up in a situation like this one. Really favorable matchup, good head-to-head data. Minus 150 odds. Again, a little juice, but I still think it's definitely worth taking a look at. So that's our first single bet in today's video. And then the rest of my picks in the single bet category will come from the second playing game, the Dallas Mavericks versus the Sacramento Kings, 10 p.m. tip-off. Our second player prop overall, and our first from this game, we're going Klay Thompson of the Dallas Mavericks under 19.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. We're against one for minus 122 over on FanDuel. And pretty good value, honestly, in terms of the data. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the under, averaging 14 PRAs per game over his last 10 games. Overall this year, in the red, 49%, but still almost half the time he cashed the under. 35 out of 72 games he cashed the under, averaging 19.39 PRAs per game this year. Again, enough under cashes there to be still pretty confident. And looking at the head-to-head data, 4 of his last 7 matchups against Sacramento dating back to last year with Golden State, he's cashed the under, a 57% hit rate, averaging 17.86 PRAs per game across those last 7 matchups against Sacramento. Now, they played 2 times this year as a member of the Dallas Mavericks. The first time back on February 10th. He did cash the over narrowly with 19 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist. And the last time they played back on March 3rd, the most recent one, not a huge game for Klay, 3 points and 3 rebounds. Now, granted, he only played 24.6 minutes, assuming, again, a single elimination game, he's going to play at least 30-plus minutes. He's definitely going to do better than that. He had only took 4 shots, 1 for 4 shooting. He's had a decent amount of shot attempts against the Kings, but in some of these matchups, you have seen Sacramento have his number. Even this one right here, this was the play-in game last year, Sacramento versus Golden State, and Klay Thompson, 0 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist in that game. Some people are calling for a little bit of a revenge game. Obviously, that was his last game. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was his last game with the Warriors. That's kind of how his Warriors tenure ended, was that loss to Sacramento. So some people are going to say this is a revenge game for him. I just think Sacramento defensively, they've gotten a little bit better of late, especially versus the guards here. Now, versus point guards, looking at the overall numbers, 3rd best defense in points allowed, 1st in rebounds, 17th in assists. Klay has been lining up kind of as a point guard. They're all in flux right now. I mean, obviously, you're happy to have AD back. You're happy to have Lively and Gafford back and everybody, but trying to figure out how to fit them all in the lineup. So right now you have PJ Washington playing the 3, Davis the 4, and Gafford the 5, or Lively the 5, and then Gafford's coming off the bench, basically. Klay, who is basically either a 2 or a 3, is basically been forced to play the 1 because now they want Najee Marshall in the lineup. He's playing the 2. So usually Spencer Dinwiddie had been playing point guard with Kyrie Irving being out. Now Klay Thompson is kind of playing that point role. It's all kind of confusing. Again, the positionless era, it's tough to get a read on defensive matchups. But Sacramento, although versus shooting guards not as good, over the last 15 games to close out the year, Sacramento, they were top half of the league in terms of defense versus point guards and shooting guards. So pretty good numbers across the board here. I just think if Dallas is going to win this game and find success, it's not going to be through Klay Thompson. There are other position matchups that are better suited. I think Klay, maybe the assist line, we'll see what happens, but I just don't think Klay is going to have that big of a game here. So I do like his under here, 19.5 PRAs. And then our third single bet, our second bet from this game, speaking about matchups I prefer, we have PJ Washington, again of the Dallas Mavericks, over 23.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Pretty solid value too. Minus 105 odds over on DraftKings. This one is available on a variety of the sports books for a variety of odds. Data is pretty solid. 5 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 26.2 PRAs per game. Stretch the data out to the entire season view for PJ Washington. Like Klay Thompson, a 49% hit rate on the over, 28 out of 57 games. Just less than half the time he cashed this over, averaging 24.72 PRAs per game overall this year. Again, not too shabby. Now, if you look at the head-to-head data, not as much of a sample size as Klay Thompson, but 3 of his last 4 matchups dating back to last year with Sacramento. He's cashed the over. That is, of course, a 75% hit rate, averaging 25.5 PRAs per game across those last 4 matchups. Now, they've only played one time this year, back on December 30th, that PJ Washington has played against Sacramento. Had a really big game, 28 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. And that makes a lot of sense. Sacramento versus the small forward position, which again, that is where PJ Washington is primarily playing. I know we are in the positionless era. I'll keep saying it over and over, but if we were to go ahead and lock them into a position, PJ Washington, who I would say is normally more of a power forward, he's playing the small forward position right now, and it's a pretty good matchup. Sacramento versus small forwards, not very good. 23rd in points allowed overall. Now, from a rebounds and assist category, they were okay. If you narrow it down to the last 15 games, Sacramento's still ranking in the bottom half of the league in points allowed. He's mostly going to carry this in points. He'll have a couple rebounds and assists to go ahead and throw in there, but I think primarily points will be the way he cashes his over, and they're still bottom 10 in the NBA over the last 15 games in points allowed to the small forward position. Overall, 23rd. So I think it's a pretty good matchup. For the odds, too, minus 105 odds, pretty strong value. Sacramento defensively, they're not as bad as some people would think, but versus the small forward, versus the wings, they do have some issues there. So I do think it's a pretty good spot for PJ Washington to go ahead and cash this over. And for minus 105 odds, too, pretty strong value. All right, guys, that ends the single bet portion of today's video. We now move on to our parlay portion. We have a 3-leg parlay. We are using FanDuel for today's parlay. We are about to hit the 12-minute mark in today's video. So, guys, if you are still watching at this point, thank you very much, as always, for watching. We appreciate those who watch through each and every single video here on the channel all the way through. If you come for the picks, understandable, but those who do listen to all the analysis, who watch through the entire thing, I really do appreciate you guys. So comment 12 down below if you are still watching the video at this point. All right, guys, 3-leg parlay. Again, we're using FanDuel here. We're going to go back in time, back to the Miami Heat Chicago Bulls game. Again, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. The first leg of our 3-leg parlay, a familiar face in today's video, Tyler Hero. But this time, we're taking his alternate points line over 20.5 points. We're getting this one for minus 310 over on FanDuel. These are all alternate lines. Alternate lines are just the way to go when it comes to betting parlays. Obviously, being an alternate line, the data is going to be really solid. 8 of his last 10 games, Tyler Hero has cashed the over, averaging 27.4 points per game over his last 10. Go to the last 20 games, still a 65% hit rate, 13 of his last 20, averaging 23.45 points per game over his last 20 games. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view. A 66% hit rate on the over, 51 out of 77 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 23.9 points per game overall this year. So like I said, really good numbers across the board here for Tyler Hero. And of course, the head-to-head data, each of his last 4 matchups against Chicago, he's cashed the over, averaging 24.5 points per game across those last 4, including the last time they played this year back on April 9th. Again, just a week ago, he had 30 points in that matchup. I already talked about in the previous play the defensive matchup here with Chicago. I don't need to go into that again. The moral of the story being really good data, really good matchup. I think 21 points in this game for Tyler Hero is very, very doable. And sticking with the same game, guys, our second leg of our 3-leg parlay, we're going Kello Ware of the Miami Heat over 6.5 rebounds, minus 300 over on FanDuel. Again, very high alternate lines, but I think they're very much worth it. Kello Ware has cashed this over in 7 of his last 10 games, averaging 10.2 rebounds per game over his last 10 games. So far this year, a 56% hit rate for the rookie, 36 out of 64 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 7.39 rebounds per game this year. Now, early in the year, you see a lot of misses. He also wasn't playing a ton of minutes in that early part of the season. Actually, I'm going to go and put a filter here to show you guys what I'm talking about. One of the many cool features of Outlier, by the way, shout out to Outlier, the sponsor of today's video. If you want to go ahead and check out anything that you've seen in this video, we have a link down below in the description, 7-day free trial. To check it out for yourself, you get access to all of this information, all of this stuff, line movements, betting percentages, everything. There's so much insight and so much information Outlier provides. I'm only giving you guys the tip of the iceberg, so go ahead and check out the link down below in the description, 7-day free trial to check it out for yourself. Very special thank you to Outlier for sponsoring today's video and all of our NBA player prop videos this season. So the filter I went ahead and put in here is to show Kello Ware's minutes. Now again, we look at the overall numbers, right? Go back to the entire season view, 56% hit rate on the year, like we just talked about, right? Now we'll go ahead and go between 20 minutes, as long as he plays between 20 minutes and 43 minutes, which he doesn't play that many minutes often. But when he plays at least 20 minutes, a 78% hit rate on the year, 28 out of 36 games, averaging 9.86 rebounds per game across this data range. Now, over the last 20 games, he's averaging 26.4 minutes per game. And I mean, you see some games vary, right? 35 minutes. He still has some moments, 18 minutes, 22 minutes. Again, sticking with that line of even let's go 18 minutes, right? If he plays between 18 and we're going to go ahead and put it down to 34. 34 minutes, I think, is fair. So this is even between 17 and 34 minutes played, which I think is a pretty fair range. 67% hit rate, 24 out of 36 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 8.44 rebounds per game. So, taking the early part of the year off when he was barely playing, all right, when he was playing very little minutes, he's been on a really good run lately with this line. So, really good data, really good numbers across the board here. And the head-to-head data, very solid as well. All three matchups against Chicago this year, he's cashed the over, averaging 10.33 rebounds per game. So really good numbers. Chicago overall this year, they actually are a pretty decent rebounding team. 18th in rebounds allowed versus centers overall. If you do narrow it down the last 15 games, they're actually a pretty decent rebounding team, surprisingly. But I still think Kelly Ware should go ahead and get what he needs to get. Again, the lowest number he's had versus Chicago this year, 7 rebounds, which obviously cashes the over. Look at the rebound chances. He's averaging about 13.5. Now, we don't have the data for this one, but he's averaging about 13.5 rebound chances per game across the three matchups. In Chicago overall, though, despite being decent versus centers, overall they're a bottom 3 rebounding team in the NBA this season. So pretty good data across the board here for the second leg of our 3-leg parlay. And for the third leg of our 3-leg parlay, guys, we're going back to that Mavericks-Kings game, and we're going DeMar DeRozan over 20.5 points. It's the third leg of our 3-leg parlay, minus 260 over on FanDuel. Again, very juiced alternate line, but we got to go that way here. Again, solid data. 8 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 23.5 points per game. Last 20 games, 15 of his last 20, averaging 22.3 points per game. So far this year, a 61% hit rate on this over, 47 out of 77 games. Again, averaging 22.21 points per game. The one place where the data isn't great is the head-to-head data. Just one of his last 5 matchups against Dallas, he's cashed the over. They played 3 times this year. The one big cash he had back on February 10th, he had 42 points against Dallas. The last time they played March 3rd, he just missed the mark with 20 points. And their first meeting this year, he had 14 points. I'd like the head-to-head data to be a little bit better, but the defensive matchup is very strong here. Dallas versus small forwards this year, they're 18th in points allowed, giving up 21.4 points per game. However, if we go ahead and narrow it down to the last 15 games of the NBA regular season, they were the second worst defense in the NBA in terms of points allowed to the small forward position, giving up over 24, nearly 25 points per game to small forward. So really good matchup defensively here. I know the head-to-head data isn't great, but you do have that game where he went off for 42 points against Dallas. Again, single elimination game. He's going to play a lot of minutes. Now, the first time they played, only 25.5 minutes and, 6 for 13. The last time they played, 8 for 15. Just missed the mark in that one. You got to think, unless it's a blowout in the favor of Dallas or maybe even Sacramento, you got to think he's going to play over 30 minutes per game. And just to go ahead and show you guys, again, the range, if he plays between 30 and we'll say 36, 38, 36, somewhere in that ballpark of 30 to 38 minutes. So far this season, a 58% hit rate on the over, 26 out of 45 games, averaging 21.87 points per game. When he plays at least 30 games, you go ahead and search that data out, 65% hit rate. So the more minutes he plays, obviously the more shots he's going to take. The head-to-head data gets a little bit better as well across the board. So pretty good spot here. Again, I know they have Levine and they have Sabonis, they have all these things, but I do think with Lively being back, with Anthony Davis being back, Sabonis could struggle a little bit here. Zach LaVine is so wishy-washy, hit or miss. I think DeMar DeRozan is your best bet from a scoring perspective for this Kings team. So that's the third leg of our 3-leg parlay. So jumping over to FanDuel, a quick little recap here. We got Tyler Hero over 20.5 points, Kelly Ware over 6.5 rebounds, and DeMar DeRozan over 20.5 points. You parlay all 3 together, you get a parlay of plus 149 odds over on FanDuel. Pretty good value for a nice little 3-leg parlay with some heavy alternate lines. So guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much as always for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. I'll be back tomorrow with another, excuse me, not tomorrow. There are no games tomorrow. I'll be back on Friday with another NBA player prop video to share with you guys. Until then, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Wednesday. Enjoy day 2 of the NBA play-in tournament. Until next time, let's go ahead and make some money.